welcome to my channel. Well, sorry I haven't done any videos in a while. I've been going through some mental issues, but we'll not get into that right now. What I was thinking about was, you know, when you're going to go buy a knife, we go through a process. Sometimes that stuff happens, you know, like instantaneously, and then other times, you know, it takes a while. And my main reason for thinking about this is, if anybody has an issue with, you know, like compulsive, you know, like I've got to get this and everything, it might help to break it down, the process of actually, what is it? I guess the topic would be, what does it go, what do I go through? Let's put it that way. What do I go through in the process of buying a knife, you know, from the beginning to the end, you know? So number one would be discovery. If you're having an issue with, let's say, buying too many knives or knives that you regret, this hasn't happened to me. It's kind of like blasphemy. What? Buying too many knives? Knives that you regret? You had to have found out about it in some way. Back in the day, it would have been a magazine advertisement, maybe a radio ad, or, you know, a spot on television or something. But it was limited. Nowadays, if you're into the knife world, you're watching this. I mean, you had to have gotten here somehow. How did you single out this knife? Well, it could have been through, you know, the internet. Probably, most likely, since that's what we're on. But it could have been like in a chat room. Somebody was talking about something and you didn't even see it, but you heard about it, you know. We'll use an example here as the bug out. All right. Your definition of this word probably was something different than a knife before that came out, you know. So you might not even hit it just because the word that they chose is so familiar. Nowadays, with so many knives out there, and everybody, you know, this is the name of my knife. You can't use it. If you are, you're infringing of, you know. So this word now is associated with a knife. How did you find out? Well, you didn't even see it at first. But for most people, it's going to be visual. Now, you know, here I was saying it could be audio. You know, you could have heard about it. Somebody mentioned it. Hey, I'm trying to write through this. Adios. No, audio. You know, words, sounds, and this has a lot to do with it. We're still basically animals from the monkey branch, and so shiny things, you know, interest us, and flashy, shiny, and flashy could be, you know, like somebody wrote it down. I guess that comes in visual. I'm not trying to break this down into the five senses because it goes beyond that. It comes into a lot of things come into play, like emotions. You know, your emotions pop in, and here it can get really tricky. These things don't necessarily have to happen in sequence, but this one does. This one has to be number one. After that, it could be all these things hit at once, emotions, you know, visual and everything. Because if you're a heterosexual male and a very nice female, very nice looking female, very attractive, happen to be holding a knife, the first thing that's going to pop out to you is probably not going to be the knife. The discovery of it may, you know, like she's holding a bug out in her hand. And it takes like many views before you realize, hey, wow, she's got a knife. I like everything else about her. Well, what's she like? Maybe she's got a, you know, good choice in knives too. So here, pow, they're hitting you with visual, emotional. Maybe she talks in it. You like her voice. Boom. you know. Uh, but what they're really trying to get you, as far as like advertising, is for you to notice this. Eventually, if this was a model or something, they can kick her out or replace her with another one even better looking, or a robot. Who knows? But they got you by then because you're already thinking about it. So, after you have discovery, you start to investigate. For me, I start to investigate. Investigate. I think there's an I there. There may be an E in there. I don't know. No spell checking going on right here. So with me, I start doing my research. I start looking at reviews. Company specs. People actually using it, And then opinions, which comes in reviews. Every review is an opinion, even if they say they don't have an opinion. That's that's something in there that's different. It's positive or negative, or some variation of that, like overall. I mean, and it depends on the reviewer. Do you trust what they're saying, or you think that they're bought out, by paid promotions? That's technically they're supposed to announce that, hey, they gave me this. They didn't tell me what to say, but they gave me this, so factor that in. They got to say that, if you buy it on your own, you don't have to say that. It's your own opinion. Now, for me, no company has given me any knife. Most of my knives are bought or given to me by people, and the people that give them to me, as far as I know, do not represent these companies. Of the things that they're not. If somebody gives me a case knife, it's not a case employee. They may have been in the past or whatever, but it's not. And there's nothing wrong with people doing reviews. If companies give them that, I'm not complaining or anything like that. I'm not looking for that either. I'm just saying. This is what I'm going through when I. The process I go through when I'm doing it. Now, the problem with a lot of this is the best thing would be to get one in hand if you can, but most of the time for me, it means I'm going to have to buy that, or it's going to have to be, a gift or something, because there are not very many knife stores around here. The pawn shops around nearby just has like either junk knives or high-end knives that but nothing really in between, and nothing for pawn, nothing used and stuff like that for sale. It's just like, here's a very limited selection of knives. Even Walmart, the one that I've got, has got a better selection. So it could be the internet. It could go to like some physical store. But a lot of times, here comes the input, and what you've got to watch out for, or I've got to watch out for, is a self-fulfilling prophecy, where if you say, I'm looking for, you've got your parameters, a particular blade shape, grind or whatever, all this other stuff that goes into, they're all hiding back here, all the different things that go into making a knife. Locking mechanism, does it need a locking mechanism, fixed blade, whatever, But then a lot of times it comes into affordability. I mean, it could pass all these other little tests, like, oh, I like it. But is it affordable? And that depends on your income, So I'm not making any judgment calls here or anything, but a lot of times you can find something that maybe they didn't have a hot looking chick there, you know, and you can take your emotion, that particular emotion, you know, out, which had nothing to do with the knife really. It had more to do with your hormones. And if you start in the process of doing your research, one of the parameters is going to be, you know, besides steel and all this other stuff, is how much does it cost? You know, and when I run into this, usually what I'm looking at costs way more than you can find an almost exact same knife for much less money. But it's not an official bug out, you know, or it's shaped slightly different, but the same concept is going down, you know, which is like lightweight. Some people get in here, and because of, you know, Benchmade at one time had this anti-Second Amendment stance. I'm not going to get into that, but they did something that pissed off the Second Amendment crowd. And the Second Amendment crowd buys knives a lot of times, guns and knives, you know. So they got a bad rap from that because of their actions. Now, you know, they may have changed an eye. I don't want to get Benchmade, you know, fans on my butt because I like their knives and stuff too. But man, this is usually what hits me right here. And if they've had a tendency to support something, you know, anti something that you like, you know, which like guns, you like guns and knives, well, why would you support a company that doesn't support what you like? You know, it's kind of like against your interest there. So, you know, again, emotion pops into it. But if you really start looking at this stuff and saying that they make stuff that you really like or whatever, sometimes you need to go reevaluate how long ago was that, what really happened, you know, does that really piss you off, all this other stuff, because you're making a judgment here of whether or not you're going to buy something. And if you really wanted one of those, no matter what was going on, in my opinion, you know, you should buy one. No matter what was going on in your head. If that's just something it's a red line, you know, that can't be crossed or whatever, and once they've done it, they're out, you know, then fine, you know, that's helped you narrow it down. You can't get what you like, you know, no matter how good that woman looked, no matter how good it looked, it felt in hand, or it was talked about or whatever, because of this factor right here. Pow. It's made the decision for you. You know, if I stayed with the one type of knife that I like the whole time, it'd be pretty boring. You know, if I like fixed blades and I just stuck with fixed blades, fixed blade can do anything other one can do, but even better, you know, whatever. There goes all the folding knives. I like folding knives, you know. I like big knives, I like little knives, and some of the times it's appearance, you know. It's like, wow, functionally, you know, you don't necessarily want to go bushcrafting with this, but this would be perfectly fine sitting at a table cutting up, you know, vegetables or something. You're not trying to chop down a tree with it. If you are, you know, I think you're misguided. I'm just saying that right now. You might want to evaluate your brain system right there. Just stick with the shiny stuff and keep it for what it's for, you know. But if it doesn't pass this one right here, if you can't afford it, well, then you have to get creative ways. You know, I wouldn't recommend it, but there's like credit, you know. So but you better factor that in. You better factor the interest payments into that. You know, if there is interest on it, if it isn't Danny Dino's painless flex pay payments, with no interest and everything, you've got to factor that into the cost, no matter how long it takes you to pay it off. And then this knife that, was only like $15 a month. You keep adding that up over the months, and then you throw the interest in on the total that you were supposed to be. And they can factor in a lot of ways of doing that, the interest. How do they do it? Compound and quarterly or whatever, And they're required, to put the annual percentage rate on there. But, like in a pawn shop, if you borrow something, even though you're giving them collateral, the interest rate could be 250% or more. And it's legal for them to do that. Man, that's crazy. So, it may not be affordable if you're not paying cash for it, or you're not just flat out paying for it. I can say that the Amazon one, where you pay it and there's no fee, that's true. It doesn't do that. I think Sezzle is also another one that does that, but you've got to build up kind of like a history with them before they'll trust you with a lot of stuff. But still, it can or can't be affordable. But in the end, I usually get down to this one right here. Do I really need it? And this is a hard one to get past. Because a lot of times I have substitutes. You're either going to get them, they cost less but they're similar to what you want, or you already have it. I need a 4-inch blade. Bam. How many 4-inch blades do you want? You got them. You already got it. It may not be exactly, you can modify it if it's cheap. You don't like the handle material, pop the retaining mechanism on, however they used it, glue or rivets or whatever, and get into replacing it yourself. Especially if it's something inexpensive like a kitchen knife. You like it, the way it cuts and everything else, you just hate the handles because they're plastic or whatever. Pow! Slap some wood or mica or whatever you want to put on it, abalone, and go to town. In the process, you're going to learn something. If you do that, you're going to learn, maybe you shouldn't have done that. Maybe you should have left it alone. But you learn something. You learn that, working with epoxy can be tricky. Or acrylics. Working with wood, it depends on the wood. Working with stone, yeah, there's issues there. Micarta too, there's pluses and minuses of everything. But that's usually the process that I go through. By this time, if I've answered this question, it negates the whole thing a lot of times, because it's like, a lot of times, most of the time the answer is no, but the difference between need and want. You got to understand that. A need is something that you really got to have. A want is something you'd like to have. There's a lot of wants. There's only, if you break it down, to basic survivals, there are very few things that you actually really need to get by in life. They're pretty simple, water, food, shelter, maybe some means of protection. You can make, stuff out of stones. We can go caveman if we have to. As long as you still have a brain, you can figure a lot of this out. It's not good to do it on the job learning survival. It's best to practice this stuff a little bit in advance. It won't hurt you in a safe environment to learn how to make fire with a flint or something. You don't have to do it all the time. You can carry a lighter, but it's good to know how to do it. I'm not bragging or anything. I learned it too. My father and grandfather never taught me how to just spark it from a stone. I heard about it. I've seen it on TV and stuff. But I never did it until I got much older, and I just decided, hey, this would be kind of fun to do, kind of fun to learn. So anyways, getting back to this process, like I said, it may happen pretty quick with you. It may happen in different stages and everything, but I think most of us go through some form or process of that. And if you're having a problem because you can't afford knives and stuff, you really should try to analyze what's going on with you. You know, why did you do that? You know, are you doing it just to impress other people? That's not a good idea. Now, again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist or whatever. I just know what I know from living life, that trying to please others is never going to make you happy. So if you're doing it for the right reasons, you don't have to go through this. If you just say, hey, I want it, I can afford it, I'm gonna get it, bam, there you go. You know, fine. I got no problem with that. I go through that sometimes. I sit there and I've had knives on my wish list for so long, and I always skip them and get something else, and finally something in me snaps and says, you know what, I'm just gonna get it this time. And bam, I put it in the cart, or I get it delivered, and I've got it. You know, that's one that I can knock off on the list. Probably by the time I knock that one off the list, there's been dozens more that have fallen into, no, I don't really need them, but do I want them? Yeah, you know, for whatever reason, for a collection, for use, just because you like the looks of it and everything. Just make sure that you keep it in check. You keep your hobby in check and everything. By a lot of times you're just going to have to realize that if you've got a really huge list, you're not going to get everything you want unless you become independently wealthy. You hit the lotto or something. And then I don't think it would be as much fun as you think it is if you got everything you wanted all the time. You were perfectly spoiled, you know, whatever you want, snap your fingers, you know, you've got it right there. What's the fun in that, you know? Anyway, all this is just my opinions. Thank you for all of you who have made it to the end on this one. I've got a walk around video that I'll put up later on where I did another just ramble. I'm going to put it up in 2 parts. And yeah, so there will be more content coming up, but thank you for sticking with me and watching, my loyal people. And for those of you that just joined, yeah, I deal with knives and stuff and everything too. I will be doing that, you know, in the future. This is just a ramble. I do that sometimes. So, thanks for watching, and have a nice day.
Santa give?